Swim check 1, 2. Bike check 1, 2. Run check 1, 2. I think we're ready. Let's try this. Welcome to the Try Beginner's Luck podcast, a podcast where we explore the sport of triathlon from a variety of perspectives to help beginner triathletes on their journey. I am your host, Mashonda Shines. All right, welcome back to another edition of Try Beginner's Luck. I'm just excited to always have new guests that are entering sport for various reasons, and always grateful to bring new people to this audience. Today, I have a person that I get to bring to the audience who just started triathlon back in 2021, but didn't just start triathlon. She went right into the deep end and started with a half in 2021 and then went for a full in 2022. So we'll get to hear about her journey as to why, how, when, where, all the good stuff. But I guess out of that, she came up with an idea and thought that to break barriers and provide an opportunity for people to get the items they needed at a reduced cost, I want to give back. And we'll get to hear her story on an organization that she started. As you guys have heard me say here, I love to try on a budget. And so I think with all the other expenses of this sport, one way to eliminate that barrier is to have opportunities to thrift. Without further ado, I get to bring to this audience Miss Marguerite Madden. Marguerite, welcome to the Try Beginner's Luck podcast. How are you?
Thank you so much for having me. I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good. So it's a pleasure to have you on. You are definitely persistent. I love that in a person that doesn't give up. And so I guess that speaks to you just starting right at the half distance. So tell me, you're in sport in 2021, 2020? No, 2022, 2021, 2020. I know it's 2021. So you enter with the half distance. What made you just get into sport right at the half distance?
Yeah, so I'm somebody who, if you grew up with me, went to school with me, you would not remember me as being athletic at all. I was the bench warmer when I was on the high school volleyball team, and I didn't really learn the benefits of participating in sport until I got into college, and I got into it by running. I ran my first competitive 5K my freshman year of college. I went to school in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and that would have been in 2018 in the fall. And like so many people who participate in that first endurance event, the dominoes just kind of started to fall after that. And I couldn't run before that, or I'd never run that kind of distance before that. And crossing the finish line after running 3.1 miles was just the most surreal, best feeling that I felt up to that point, and I was hooked. So after that, I stuck with running for a while, and I wanted to see if I could push myself to do a 10K. And then it became a 10 mile, and then it became a half marathon. And I just kind of increased the endurance distance, if you will, in the running world. And then after I ran a marathon, I was kind of itching to do something new that was continuing me to put me out of my comfort zone and teach me new skills. And that's when I dabbled in the idea of doing a triathlon. And the reason I went right into the half distance was because I was thinking, well, endurance wise, I have the ability to run a marathon distance. The half Ironman is a half marathon, so that doesn't seem too bad. Cycling, you know, I could ride a bike, but I'd never run that distance, ridden that distance before. But I thought, with proper training and things like that, I could pick that up. The thing I was really intimidated by, which was the ultimate reason that it pushed me to do it, was the swimming. I did not know how to swim, and I learned really quickly that there was a difference between knowing not how to drown and knowing how to swim. So yeah, I decided that I wanted that to be my next pursuit, if you will, and went ahead and signed up for that distance in my home state of Maryland. I did the 2021 Eagle Man Maryland in Cambridge, Maryland, and it was an awesome experience.
It's such a huge jump, right? Like knowing that you can run the distance is one thing, swimming is another thing. So did you
how did you train for this in terms of did you get swim lessons? Like, what did you do to help prepare yourself for the swim distance? Because I think what the half is a 1.2 mile swim. So take us through your training for the swim.
That's right. Yeah, 1.2 miles. And as I mentioned, I knew not how not to drown. So it was definitely a big learning curve. And I have a very patient and understanding and helpful husband who did have a background in swimming and background in sprint triathlon. So he helped me a ton in the beginning, as well as a lot of other friends of mine who had swimming backgrounds that gave me tips and pointers. Um, but yeah, just starting in the pool, starting in a 25-yard pool at our local YMCA is how I started. And then the event, the race was in a river. It was the Choptank River in Maryland, Cambridge, Maryland. So eventually I practiced open water swim, which was a whole nother transition in and of itself. Once you finally learn how to do pool laps, throwing yourself in the open water, as you know, is a big transition. So that I came around to practicing about 2 months before the race. And again, for me, it's never been about trying to get a really fast time or anything like that. It's purely about proving to myself that I can do it and doing the thing that I think that I could not do. So I wasn't trying to do it an ultra fast time. I was just trying to do it and do it somewhat comfortably. So I wasn't miserable enough to try to do it again if I made it through. And that's what happened. So
So your husband helped to teach you how to swim
he did.
and cycling. So tell me about the cycling portion because you said that you hadn't really biked that distance before. So what did your training look like for that?
Sure. Yeah. So he also helped me a lot with cycling. I used his high school road bike that he used back in his competitive days with the sprints that he did back in high school. So again, I knew how to bike, and I did for the half Ironman. I did the vast majority of my cycling training on a trainer, indoor trainer, which um, you and your audience probably know is not. I mean, it's a good way of training, but there's nothing that beats outdoor cycling and riding on the roads and getting that practice. So I did a little bit of outdoor riding towards the end of my training block in the lead up to that race, but the bulk of it was on an indoor trainer. I learned how to use bike gears on that indoor trainer and again got to practice it when I went outdoors and rode on the roads. But yeah, I did not use clip-ons. That was another thing for the half Ironman. I did not use clip-ons that race, but I did use them for the Ironman. So that was an adjustment to when I did it the second time around. But yeah, just again more leaning on him to help me and as well as friends and whatnot that I had that had more of a cycling background than I did.
So I want to share something because I know you said that riding on the trainer, there are some huge benefits to riding on the trainer.
Yeah.
And especially depending on the terrain, training on a trainer could be the way to maximize your time and to get faster. And Eagle Man and Maryland are those types of races where being on a trainer can prove to be beneficial for you. And then kind of going out occasionally just so that you can maintain your balance. And so, if you do have a trainer, maximize the trainer for what you can, especially during winter training, to get faster, get your cadence up. So, there are some huge benefits to riding on a trainer. But then there are some really amazing benefits of getting out there in the open air. So, tell us about your non clipless uh, journey because 56 miles not clipped in, of course, it's not undoable. But how did that feel for you? Because this was your first race. This is your first time doing a distance of 56 miles. So tell us about that journey of not being clipped in. But I guess you wouldn't know any other way unless you're clipped in like at a spin class and vice versa. So tell us what was that like and what was the sensation like for you?
Yeah, you kind of answered it. I didn't know what to compare it to, so it felt like my training. If anything, and I understand this now with confidence of knowing how to clip in and out of shoes, but I had convinced myself when I was doing the half Ironman that I was actually able to control myself and my body more not being clipped in. So I had not only did it feel normal to me like it did during my training rides, but it also I was using it to kind of justify having more of a sense of control, if you will, during the race when I was out on the course, feeling like if I toppled over or something like that, I could catch myself more easily. If that's true now, I don't know, but that's what I told myself at the time. Um, but yeah.
So we've done the swim, we've done the bike. Let's talk about transitions. What was the transitions like for you?
Oh my lord. The first transition after getting out of the water was the biggest relief that I felt, only to be topped by that after the Ironman transition after the swim. It was just, again, I was so afraid that I don't know if saying I wouldn't be able to do it was the right way, because I really tried to limit the self-doubt that, creeped into my head once the race started, but, it was absolutely, out of the 3 events, the one I was most nervous about. So that first transition was wonderful. Just having that relief, both with the half Ironman and the full Ironman. Um, and, not for the half Ironman, but the full Ironman, the one I did in 2022, there
Well, we're
were.
still talking about your first.
Oh,
Like, we'll
fair
get to
fair
the
enough,
second one, but let's talk about the first one because I don't want people to
fair
get
enough,
confused about which one is which. I want to like stay focused, beginner friendly. So,
fair enough.
yeah. So just keep on with the first. You got it.
Well, I will, say that there were jellyfish in both the waters, because the river didn't change. It was the same course for the Ironman as it was the Eagle Man, so both happening in the Chop Tank River. So that was another reason I was very relieved to be out of the water and into that first transition, was because we got away from the jellyfish. Um, but yeah, I guess there's no other feeling than just, like, relief that I could say I felt, after that first transition. And then transition 2, I felt relieved in the sense that I didn't have any major mechanical problems on the bike, because that was my fear, for the bike, was that something would go wrong. I would get a flat tire or something would happen. And, I watched the YouTube videos and watched some clips ahead of time about how to change a flat, and I had the gear with me to do that. But whether or not I could actually do it is another question. So I was just praying the whole time that nothing like that would happen. And in transition two, once I made it back safely, that was, the feeling there of relief that I didn't have any major mechanical issues. So, yeah, those are how my transitions went, and they also went very long. Again, I'm not in it to win it, I'm in it to prove it to myself that I can, so I took my sweet time during my transitions on, both races.
Well, that is cool. It's interesting. The chop tank, that is so wild that the chop tank had jellyfish in the summertime because usually that's like the late fall. But I tell you, that place is notorious for those nettles. I tell you.
Yeah, it's the
So
brackish water.
yeah. So which would you prefer? Would you prefer T1 or T2?
Probably T1, just because if I made it there, that means I made it through the swim.
Mm-hmm.
And again, that's a big relief for me. And I also have excitement and energy still in a way that I don't have in T2 before the bike. So,
Okay. I keep forget. Okay. Awesome. So tell us about the run. The run is what you came in strong with. So you are a runner. That's your jam. So tell us about your first 13.1 after a 56-mile bike.
so I'm not sure how familiar you are with the Maryland Cambridge course, but it's very flat, as most things are over on the Maryland Eastern Shore. And the time of day with the Eagle Man, most people are running the run portion late morning, early afternoon, and that's the heat of the day. So it was very hot. It was very flat. It was, I want to say it was 2 loops. I could be misremembering that, but it was through a neighborhood, and everybody who lives in that neighborhood's out on the lawn spectating, cheering you on, things like that. The energy was awesome. It's the first time in the race, and this goes for any triathlon regardless of the distance, that you can actually talk to the people that are also doing the race. So it was an awesome opportunity to chat with people, especially when the motivation was starting to be lacking and you were really starting to feel the fatigue. Just talking to your neighbor or somebody who was moving at your pace hearing their why, hearing their story was an incredible thing. So that was awesome. And then I would say towards mile 8 or 9, when that home stretch is in the distance, like, I caught a second wind, and my mile splits were actually a lot faster. I don't remember exactly what they were, it doesn't matter, but I did catch a second wind once I knew the home stretch was in distance, and that last, like, 5K, 4-mile distance, I was running fast, and it felt really good.
Listen, it doesn't even matter. Once you see that you're almost to the finish line, everything goes out the window. You don't think about pain or
It's so
anything.
true. It's a good example too of, like, how much of these kind of races are mental as well. Like, when you
Mhm.
when you know mentally that you're almost done, you're physically you can kick it into a gear that you just didn't know existed till you're in that situation.
Absolutely. So you were excited to get to your full distance. And so that was your second race ever. So let's talk about your second race. Tell us about your iron distance that you did for your second time.
Yeah, so it was about twice as long as you would expect, longer than that. Um, It was the most surreal day ever. It was, I think my alarm went off at 3:45 that morning, and I went to bed at about 1:32 in the morning the next morning. It was a long day, but it was the best day, and there's just no way to put into words other than experiencing it yourself, being able to cross a finish line for something that you never, ever, ever thought would be possible for you. Um, that's why I am hooked on endurance sports, as are so many other people. But it was an incredible experience, and it was a very different experience than a half Ironman at the same time, just because of the duration of it. You start when the sunrise is going up, you're still running when the sun is setting. That was one of the most surreal, special moments for me of the whole 15 plus hours I was racing, was seeing the sunrise right before I entered the water and then watching it set when I was on mile who knows what, probably 3 or 4 of the marathon, later that evening. That was really special. There were so many special moments. I won't go on and on about it, but it was a very special day.
Well, this is your time to shine. That's when you should go on and on about it, is when you have an opportunity to chat about your experiences. But I won't force you to tell us about your journey. It's all to the good. Um, so you did your Ironman, and what has been next for you? You've done two triathlons, but you said you're hooked on endurance sports. So what endurance sports have you done since your race in 2022?
So since my race in 2022, I got back into running,
Okay.
and specifically Grandma's Marathon. It's a big race up in Minnesota, Duluth, Minnesota,
Hmm.
which I think I may have mentioned this, but my husband and I were living there the last 3 years. So that's another reason, back to when I did the half Ironman, that I was training a lot on the trainer, was because it was Minneapolis wintertime and riding outside was not an option, at least for me. But yeah, so I did Grandma's Marathon this past summer, in 2023. I was a Girls on the Run soulmate, so I was a charity runner for them, and fundraise money to run that race for them up in Minnesota. And honestly, for me, again, one of the reasons I'm so hooked on endurance sports is because of how much it helps me in other areas of my life, and just that spillover effect that it has on improving, again, just every aspect in my life. The more I focus on training towards a certain physical feat or goal. So I've really been trying to be intentional since Grandma's Marathon, which was last summer, about how I can take the lessons I've learned from endurance sports, whether it's running or triathlon, and applying them to other non-athletic feats, if you will. So whether that be like in my professional career, my personal relationships, things like that, there's just so many transferable things that I think you learn from endurance sports. And I've really been trying to focus this season of my life on how I can take the lessons I've learned the last couple of years and in helping improve those areas and those aspects, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. And because I think that this is an opportunity to share, for me, I can feel the same way. So,
Yeah.
when you're doing endurance sports, you take the problem solving and the lessons you learn. So let's pull people into your life, Marguerite. Let's tell them about the lessons that you have been able to transfer to your personal life, your professional life, so they can have some tangible uh, skills in case they're interested in doing long course and the longer distances so that they can also have something to look forward to. So, what is one of your biggest takeaways? Let's start there. What is one of your biggest takeaways of transferable skills that you've been able to transfer into your personal and or professional life?
Yeah, I think it's this idea, and it's something I say often, and certainly it's not coined by me. I don't know who the original source is, but it's the idea of being consistently good versus occasionally great, and just showing up and doing good things day in and day out, and that being much more impactful for where you want to go and your long-term goals than taking occasional big steps to get there. And that idea that consistency compounds, those small steps that you're doing every day and showing up for yourself doing will compound over time and get you to be closer to where you ultimately want to be. Again, whether that's a professional goal you're pursuing or um, a area of personal growth you're trying to develop in. So I guess and that's like a mindset, if you will, that I've tried to carry with me into my life outside of sports. And my day job is a teacher. I'm a K through 12 special education teacher, and that's certainly a lesson that I can apply with teaching every day because any educator knows that it's very easy to feel overwhelmed thinking of the long term school year, school calendar, things like that. And a lot of days you're just taking it day by day, and some days hour by hour or minute by minute. And that idea that just showing up consistently, again, putting in a good effort, but making sure it's consistent is better than showing up once a week and giving it your best. That concept. It's true for endurance sports and it's true for things like that, and at least in my career, and I would say others too.
It's the compound good for me. You're right. It's
Yeah,
that compound good that plays out over time and pays out dividends over time.
absolutely.
So, what's next as we're thinking about being thoughtful? What races do you have coming up in 2024?
Nothing.
That works too.
Nothing. I have nothing on the calendar, and to be honest, I'm enjoying it. Um, I always want endurance sports to be something that adds to my life and not taking away from it. And I will be honest, I was feeling a little burned out after grandma's marathon training this past summer and the Ironman training before that. Both those training blocks happened within the same 12 months, and um, it was a little much. By the end of June, when the marathon ended, I was like, all right, I'm ready to find the joy of movement and the joy of fitness again without following a strict routine and training plan for anything in particular. So that's very much the season I'm still in right now, of just enjoying exercise and movement for the sake of doing it. I try to hold myself to the standard that like I want to be able to, if a friend calls me up and asks me to do a 5K with them the next weekend or something like that, like I'll be able to maintain a baseline of fitness where I could enjoy that and have fun and do something like that with them. But as far as any uh, concrete races that I've signed up for, there is nothing yet.
Awesome. Now, I want to go back to something because we do talk about this on Try Beginner's Luck. Sometimes when you start with the greater and the larger distances, it
Yeah.
can produce burnout quicker than if you move up from the sprint or super sprint to sprint, sprint to Olympic, Olympic to half, half to full. So, do you think if you could reverse the engineer this, that you
Yeah.
would start back at the sprint so that you could have a gradual build up so that you wouldn't produce the burnout?
Yeah, it's a good question. And it's the progression that I followed with running, right? Like I mentioned, my first running event was a 5K, and then I progressed to a 10K, and I followed that progression in running specifically. I think I the short answer to your question is I don't know, because my why for doing the half Ironman and then ultimately the full Ironman was because I really did not think I could do it. I specifically the swimming aspect. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and it wasn't. I knew that the chances of me being able to do it had I started with a sprint distance and worked up would be greater. But I was really looking for the challenge of pushing myself to start with the longer distance to see if I was capable of doing it because I really did not believe in myself that I would be able to. Um, so I think depending on what my why would be now, yes, I would go back and perhaps start with the shorter distances and work my way up. When I was training for Ironman, it was about a 12 to 14-week training block, and halfway in there, I did do a sprint triathlon that was part of my training for the larger Ironman event, and I had so much fun. It was like a perfect 45-ish minute race to an hour, and it was just the distances were great. I felt like I could go a lot faster because the distances were shorter. Um, you're done by like 9:30, 10 in the morning and still have the full day ahead of you, which is a great feeling. Um, so I did really enjoy that experience. And I remember thinking afterwards that once the Ironman's done, I would love to just do sprints for the sake of sprints. But I just haven't done it yet. So
Interesting. You've had me thinking that you've only done two races, which is the the half and then the full, but the sprint is equally a triathlon, and that's I want to dismantle that because I don't want people to feel like the sprint is not a full triathlon. The sprint is a full, and I need to change my language around that. There's the sprint, there is the Olympic, there's a 70.3, and then there's a 140.6. Why did you withhold the sprint? Why did you withhold the sprint information from
that
us?
that it was part of my training plan. So I didn't even think about it. I was thinking of like the culmination events, if you will, which were the half and the Ironman. And I forgot until I was just telling you the answer to your question just now. I honestly forgot. It was out of state. I was traveling and visiting a family friend, and he was like, "Let's do this for your training," and I said, "Sure." So, anyways, it is absolutely very much the same kind of race, just as an Ironman or half is, and that's the beauty of triathlon, right? It's all of our own races and you're starting from whatever point you're starting at and it's just you that's getting you across the finish line and that's the beauty in the sport to me is that it doesn't matter the distance, it doesn't matter the pace, like every accomplishment is as legitimate as the next person. So I don't mean
Celebrate
to.
all races. Like a race is a race, whether you were out there for 20 minutes with a super sprint or 16.59.59 for a full distance. Like it's a beautiful thing that we get to race, you know?
It's a
And
privilege.
so
It's a
it is
privilege, yeah.
truly a privilege. And I never want to take away any of that from this audience and them being able to hear about your race experience because I think that uh adds to your story. It adds, like I've raced. I've done some things. So
Yeah.
I know that you out of your experience with your races within the last couple of years, you started an organization. Tell us a little bit about the organization that you've started and why.
Yeah. So the organization, we're a 501(c)(3) called Tri-Thrift, TRI, and then thrift, as in thrift shopping. And it is a e-commerce nonprofit essentially that with the mission of helping reduce common barriers to get more people to participate in triathlon and endurance sports more largely. So we primarily do that by collecting swim, bike, and run gear donations from veteran athletes across the country, and then working to get that gear, selling it at discounted prices to new athletes. And people who are looking to get into the sport but may not be because of reasons like financial barriers. Um, every quarter, we donate about 20% of what we make to another organization called the Challenged Athletes Foundation, which is focused on providing athletic opportunities to people with physical challenges. And we also have another component of the website called the Try and Write About It blog, which is about addressing this idea of self doubt barriers and giving people a platform to talk about lessons they've learned from endurance sports slash barriers they've overcome from endurance sports in order to encourage more people who may be feeling that as well to give it a try. No pun intended.
So beautiful. Well, I am excited for you to um, start that. I think it's always good to eliminate any barrier to entry, as this sport is very, as I like to call it, resourceful rich. And so
Yeah.
it's a good opportunity for those to get the equipment that they need at a very reduced cost. And it goes back to another wonderful nonprofit organization. Well, thank you so much, Marguerite, for coming on and sharing your story with us. I do appreciate it and love
Yeah.
that you have had the opportunity to try and believe in yourself. I think that's the most beautiful part about it is like you've done it, you've now believed in yourself, and now you can in return give the gift back to someone else. So it's such a beautiful full story experience. But with that said, we don't let anyone off the podcast without answering a few of our rapid fire questions. So
Great. Let's have
let's
that.
let's give it a whirl. All right, favorite music artist.
I'm an old soul, probably Louis Armstrong, Glenn Miller. Yeah, when I'm working out, I like to listen to a lot of classic rock, but otherwise, it's some pretty old genres like those artists.
Okay. Um, what's your favorite thing about triathlon overall?
That it is a multi-sport. It's not just one discipline, and that it's your own race at the end of the day.
Where's your favorite place to bike?
I love cycling in Minneapolis. Despite it being so cold most of the year, they have some really great bike routes and trails, and I really enjoyed exploring those.
Homemade nutrition or store-bought nutrition? What's your preference and why?
Probably homemade because I know what's going into it. That said, uh, I don't necessarily have to be the one home making it. I would love to support somebody else who enjoys that maybe more than I do. Not to say that I don't enjoy it, it's just a time thing.
What's one piece of advice you would give to beginners who are looking to do their first try?
Yeah. Know your why. That's a big one. Why you want to do it. And specifically with triathlon, it doesn't need to be expensive. There are options out there. There are organizations out there that are helping to reduce that financial barrier, and I would explore those and see how they can help you.
Awesome. Favorite sign that you've seen on the race course that you can remember?
Probably, I can't remember the exact language of it, but it had something to do with surviving the jellyfish that were in the river. It was on the bike course, and yeah, I just remember seeing it and laughing out loud because it was really, really true.
At the end of a race, are you a beer, wine, water, or soda type of person?
Beer.
And do you pee on the bike or get off and take a proper pee break?
The porta potties are there for a reason. I'll get off and go in there. Like I said, I'm not trying to do any quick time, so I'll get off if I need to.
Awesome. Marguerite Madden, thank you so much for coming to Try Beginner's Luck. We often say here, whenever you try beginner's luck, you always win. And here we have a new segment on YouTube called Ask a Coach. So if you have questions that you have about the sport, be sure to write into us, fill out the form, or just hit me up, slide into the DMs on social media to let us know what questions you have so we can get them answered by our resident coaches, by Coach Maria and Coach Lloyd. So look forward to that and check us out on YouTube. We are out. Peace. Bye, everybody.
Thank you for tuning in and listening to this episode. We need your help so we can continue to try at TBL. So for more information on where you can find and subscribe to this podcast, visit www.trybeginnersluck.com. And don't forget, whenever you try Beginner's Luck, you always win.